You are listening to The Underground Subway with host David Alston, a podcast dedicated to giving you the strategies to live a free and better life. Here is David Alston.
Hi, I'm David Alston, and welcome to The Underground Subway, a podcast dedicated to one thing, and that's giving you the tools and strategies needed to allow us to live a life of freedom and liberty. What does it mean to be able to live a life full of liberty? Well, it means that we're able to live, to think, to function, to react, to act without restraints. Listen, one of the things that Harriet Tubman said that was so powerful that I love, she said, I could have freed so many more slaves if only they knew that they were slaves. That's something to think about. How many of us are living a life in which we have things holding us back, and yet we don't know that they're holding us back? That's what this podcast is dedicated to doing, giving you the tools and strategies needed to reveal those chains. How do we do that? By bringing you quality and qualified guests who will share with you their expertise and their experiences in life to show how we can recognize those chains as well as remove the chains that are holding us back. Listen, my friends, I am super excited about our guest for this edition of the Underground Subway. My guest, her name is Dr.Hollie St. Dr.Hollie St. is an Orlando-based clinical pharmacist with over a decade of helping patients manage their chronic stress and symptoms of burnout. She's a personal burnout coach and author of the upcoming book, Escape the Quicksand of Workplace Burnout, your 5-step stress survival guide. When she isn't providing individual coaching, helping out at a local hospital, or mentoring newly minted pharmacists, you will most likely find her at the lake with her 2 dogs. I want to welcome to the Underground Subway, Dr.Hollie St. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. St.
Oh, you're welcome. And thank you so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to talking with you.
All right, thank you. Well, Dr. St., let's get right into our conversation. Your bio talks about just how extensively you are into the burnout, how intense your history and your expertise is in burnout. You actually wrote a book coming out called Escape the Quicksand of Workplace Burnout. Talk to us about exactly what burnout is.
Well, burnout is different from regular stress. Stress is pretty much anything that causes your body to release a stress hormone called cortisol that sends you into that fight or flight mode. And that could be anything from, having a dog bark that you weren't expecting or being startled or anything like that. It comes and then it goes. With burnout, the World Health Organization has classified that as a constant and ongoing stress from workplace or occupation stressors. So what you find with burnout is that there are 3 key dimensions. The first is there's an overwhelming sense of exhaustion. You're just drained and bone weary. The second would be feelings of cynicism or detachment from your work. People are just annoying you or it's just not working for you. And then that third key element is a sense of ineffectiveness or a lack of accomplishment. Some of my patients have expressed it as, oh my God, a monkey could do my job. So when you're looking at burnout, it's ongoing, constant stress, and with those 3 key dimensions to it.
Well, Dr. St., what about you mentioned there are 3 components. What if one of those components were missing, such as the component that says, I am frustrated with my job. I hate it here. I'm just sick and tired of this job. I hate getting up, coming in here. I'm tired all the time. But wow, I really love my coworkers. The only reason I come in is to just be with my coworkers.
Right. The thing is, when you're burned out, you don't have to hate every aspect of your job. In fact, most people don't. There are 6 key or general areas of work life considered a workload and control, reward, community, fairness, and values. And you may have mismatches in some of those. You may feel overloaded with your work, but you feel adequately compensated. You may have coworkers that you love, so your community area is great, but maybe your job, I don't know, maybe they're destroying the environment and that really does not match with your values. And so somewhere in those 6 areas, you've got mismatches, and it's those mismatches in those 6 areas that will drive that burnout.
Hmm. Well, Dr. Sturgis, when we talk about burnout, we talk about you mentioned some of the components of it. Would I notice, would I see or recognize these components, or if we want to call them symptoms, would I recognize those more when I'm at work during the day, or would I recognize them more when I'm home?
Well, the tricky thing about burnout is that even though it's considered a workplace phenomenon, it doesn't limit itself to work. And so you may be so busy at work that all you're doing is tunnel vision work, but when you get home, that all crashes in on you. What I
Mhm.
hear a lot is from people who say, I lay down and my brain just runs and runs and runs, and I can't go to sleep, because that's when it really starts to land for them. So when you're talking burnout, you start looking at where are you at? What stage, for lack of a better term, are you at? Are you actually burned out, or are you maybe pre-burnout? Are you headed that direction? You can feel yourself going that direction. Are you in burnout, but you're still managing? Or have you gotten to the point where the chemical changes from all of that stress that's ongoing has created a situation where your brain chemistry and your physical body chemistry has started to create problems for you, like high blood pressure or diabetes or mental health concerns like depression? Once you hit that point, you're in clinical burnout, and it's starting to affect your ability to be healthy. And we've got to address it right away. Anything before that, you've got a little wiggle room there. So some people may not notice until they're deep into burnout, and other people may notice in that pre-burnout stage.
Oh, okay. So you're saying that because I've heard you mention that word a couple of times, stages or stage. So there are stages. So this isn't something that just appears. Are you saying that it's a gradual thing and we have stages of burnout?
That's exactly correct. Um, just like anything else, think of like water dripping on a rock. You may not notice right away, but over time, that stress, that water wears away and wears away and wears away. So, depending on how much people are focused on themselves, on their self care, on internally, or sorry about that, on paying attention to what's going on internally for them, they may notice in the pre burnout stage. And there are some of us that are so externally focused on our jobs, on our family, on what's going on in our community, that we may not notice what's going on with us until we're pretty deep in.
Mhm. Well, Dr. Sturgis, let me ask you this question about the difference in burnout based on different individuals. Now, my question is this: I may be a quote unquote happy go lucky person. I love to go to the gym. I may love watching action movies or spending time with the kids or the grandkids or the nieces or nephews. And someone else may be, I'll ask it in this fashion. I may be an extrovert and someone else may be an introvert. Does stress attack different people differently based on their personality? And if so, explain to us how our personality contributes to stress and or burnout.
That's a great question because burnout is very individual. It's why you can stand next to your coworker doing the exact same job and you may not be burned out, but they are. And it has to do with how your particular stressors hit you. So when you're looking at personality types, if you're an extrovert and we put you in the basement all alone, that's going to be a high stress environment for you. And so, of course, you're going to have a harder time with it. But if we take an introvert and we put them in that same alone space, that's going to be a comfortable space for them. So when you're looking at your stressors, it really is as individual as you are. Now, that being said, there are some personality traits that tend to be more easily drained. So if you're someone who gets very drained by sensory overload, then you're more likely to experience a workplace burnout because it's very rare that you're in a workplace environment that is stress-free. So you start looking at, am I somebody who's sensory overloaded consistently? Am I someone who needs to have peace and quiet? And if I am I in a busy office? Am I customer forward? Do I deal with the public constantly coming to me? And if I am in that situation, how do I build space for myself to breathe? Let's see, other personality traits. Perfectionists have a really difficult time with burnout. We see a lot of that because a lot of perfectionists won't give themselves space to be not perfect, and nobody's perfect. The other one that we see a lot, and you'll hear it called passion burnout. I call it giver's burnout because you're giving so much of yourself that there's nothing left. There's nothing left for you. You see it with the workaholics, the people that are so passionate about their jobs that they've given everything they have. You see it with parents because they give so much to their children that they have nothing left for themselves. And sometimes
Wow.
you see a hybrid between the two where you've got somebody that's super passionate about their job, but they're also introverted in a busy workplace environment. So really, when you're looking at burnout, you're looking at what individually is getting to me so that how I can fix it or support it and keep it from happening or stop it from happening.
Mhm. Is it possible to have a misdiagnosis of burnout and label it as depression?
Absolutely. In fact, we sometimes see burnout labeled as PTSD, depending on how deep you are into these problems. The reason for that is that that stress hormone, cortisol, it dumps glucose into your system and then it fires all those cylinders. And so your brain is on hyper awareness so that you can fight or flight. And then you've got all that glucose, all that sugar running in your system. And between the two, it can do all kinds of really strange things to your ability to sleep. Now, when you sleep, your serotonin levels reset. And if you're not sleeping, your serotonin levels are not resetting, and that goes directly to depression.
Mhm. Wow. So Dr. Sturgeon, one of I love to ask this question of a lot of guests on the podcast. I always explain that I'm originally from Philadelphia, and one of my favorite movies is the movie Philadelphia with Denzel Washington and Tom Hanks. And Denzel Washington is an attorney who asks a witness a question, and then he says, "Explain it to me like I'm a 6-year-old." And so sometimes I really like to ask my guests a question, and I like to ask them, explain it to me like I'm a 6-year-old. Can we be can we experience burnout without stress, or what factor does stress play into it? What, because we all hear about stress. I'm just stressed, and people will just use that term just so loosely. I'm just stressed. I'm stressed over bills. I'm stressed over this. What factor does stress play in it outside of the job, because I could be stressed at work. I'm sorry, I could be burned out at work based off, can I be burned out at work based off of a stress that I'm experiencing outside or at home?
Yes and no. Technically, the World Health Organization has classified it as a workplace phenomenon. That having been said, work is kind of loosely interpreted, in my opinion. Um, for instance, part of your work as a grandfather has to be taking care of your grandkids. It's a joy, but it's also your job as a
Oh, yeah.
grandfather to do
Whew,
that. And
that's
so,
work.
where do you draw the line between work and home? That's why you see so many parents experiencing burnout. And then they say, but it's a workplace thing. Your kids are absolutely your job. And so sometimes it's hard to pull those pieces apart and really say, my job is here and my home is here. Your burnout doesn't stay at your 9 to 5.
Right. And I guess that's my point. If I'm dealing with the children and I'm dealing with having to keep the house clean, pay the bills, get the kids dressed for school, fix lunch for the kids, prepare breakfast in the morning, take the cat out, feed the dog, feed the goldfish, do all of this, get the husband ready for work, and or get the wife, help the wife, whatever. And then I go to work. Isn't what I went through before I left home a factor in the fact that I'm burned out at work? Is it just that I just need a vacation from everything?
It absolutely can be a factor in what's going on because where's your reserves? If you're not rebuilding your reserves at home, where are you rebuilding them? Do you have
Mhm.
time to rebuild them at work, or are you now running on empty before you walked in the door?
Exactly. I understand. Like a 6-year-old, I understand. Doc, I've heard, Dr. Spurgeon, I heard people, I've read that there are some people who actually believe that there is no burnout, that that's just a myth, that it doesn't exist. Is that true? What do you think about that? What do you say to people who claim that it really doesn't exist?
There are actually people that will say, no, burnout's just a thing. You're just lazy. You
Wow.
just don't want to go to work. And the truth is, we discovered burnout. Well, Dr. Freudenberger discovered burnout in 1974. He was the one that came up with the term way back then. And we've been studying it since then. And it's been such a controversy that the World Health Organization didn't add it to their international classification of diseases until 2019, 3 years ago. So it's been
Wow.
an ongoing controversy. Is it real? Is it not real? Are people just lazy? Um, since 1974.
Wow. That's amazing. But if you entered into a conversation with that person, what would you say to them?
When
If
I
I,
get people who say to me, it's not real, my answer is, you are so lucky. You
Mhm.
are so lucky. There comes a point in everybody that I've ever known's life where stress has become so constant, whether it's been this COVID situation where so many people are feeling burnout right now, or whether it's been a job that just did not work for them, or a family situation that was not working for them. Grandma came to live with them, whatever it was. Everybody at some point experiences a constant, ongoing amount of stress that they at least hit the beginnings of it. I've never met anybody who didn't. They just didn't call it burnout.
so what is the number one when you talk to people that are actually suffering with burnout, people that are actually experiencing it? What is the number one complaint across the board that you receive from these people? And when you get that complaint, how do you respond, or what do you recommend that they do about that complaint?
Well, the number one complaint, usually they come to me saying, I can't sleep. Because remember, I'm a pharmacist. So most of my people come to me saying, I want something to sleep. And we have this conversation about why aren't you sleeping? And it becomes, well, I am just bone weary, exhausted. Well, why are you bone weary, exhausted? And eventually, what it comes down to is, yeah, pretty much they can't sleep because their brain's running and they can't shut it down. And that's a stress reaction. And no matter how much drug I give you, I may be able to knock you out, but you're still not going to get restful sleep. So, what needs to happen is we need to find the root cause to take it from, a, say, an addiction recovery situation. You cannot recover until you know what you're recovering from. And so you have to figure that out first. It's
Mhm.
kind of like what you say about you can't break the chains until you know you've got them. You
Right.
can't recover until you know what you're covering from. So if you want to deal with that lack of sleep, with that high stress situation, you've got to find those areas in those 6 work areas, the problem spots. Once you know where the problem spots are, well, then you've got a plan to move forward. But until you've actually figured that out, you're just in stress mode.
Well, Doc, I love that answer. That is amazing. I hope you please don't get offended when I call you Doc. I'm really just
No,
feel like
that's
we.
fine.
What about when you talk about finding those, those 6, those, what about children? Because I'm noticing and hearing more that children, because you said if a person can't get enough sleep, that's a trigger. Or what about children who aren't able to sleep and the parents are simply giving them melatonin every night to go to sleep, or they're bathing them in the melatonin oil or what have you, giving them baths in it? Is that really helping them? Can you really, do they even have any stress levels at 2, 3, 5, 7 years old?
They do. A child's stress level is different than an adult stress level, obviously. Now, part of that has to do with, is this a school age child or is this a younger than school age child? Because once you start looking at school age kids, then you're looking at school stressors, and that's a whole other beast. In fact, when you start looking at assessments for are you burned out, are you not burned out, there's actually a specific assessment set aside just for students to determine what's going on there. So we've known for a while that student age kids, teenagers, um, even like elementary school kids do experience a burnout, a stress related burnout. Prior to that, usually there's something else driving that, a non-school related something else. Either something went on in their life that they're working through, or there's some kind of a home environment, or something is going on to kind of drive that, because most of the little ones, their job is play. So if they're getting more than stress from play, which is actually a good stress, it's a teaching stress, then you might want to look a little deeper. Just handing them a melatonin is not going to get the job done.
Hmm. So I'm trying to, what can a 2 year old or a 3 year old, what kind of stress can they have?
Well, we live in a really interesting world. Have they been watching the news? Are they watching their parents watch the news? Have they been on social media or watching people on social media? I mean, COVID right now has everybody wound up. And of course, that affects everyone. That even affected my dog. So, little ones pick up on what's going on around them. So, are the people around them overly stressed? Did they see something? Did they hear something? And it gets tricky when they're like barely verbal to have that conversation. You know,
Right, right.
why aren't you sleeping? You can't just say, why aren't you sleeping? It becomes a conversation of, well, let's get the dolly out, or let's get the teddy bear out, and let's kind of role play the teddy bear, and teddy bear can't sleep. Why do you think teddy bear can't sleep? these kinds of things to try and dig a little deeper. And if your child is, I mean, everybody goes through bouts where they're just not sleeping well in bits and pieces, but if this is chronic, then there needs to be a deeper conversation with some kind of a professional, a doctor, a child psychologist, something, because something's going on with that little one.
Mm-hmm. And we also can, I'm talking to you as if I'm getting ready to give you the answer. I guess I should pose this as a question. Can I experience a lack of sleep because of positive stress, such as I can't sleep tonight because I've got a big trip in the morning?
Yes, we can. And when we're looking at that positive stress, um, it's interesting because people call it positive stress, but it's really anticipation. It's energy in motion.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, it can keep you awake, but that's not going to be an ongoing thing. And missing a night or two of sleep is not likely to throw your serotonin levels off to the point that it's going to become an unhealthy situation. Missing a week of sleep, well, that's a different issue.
Right. Okay. Well, Dr. Sturgeon, there was a something out recently that said that some people feel as though the answer to burnout could be something called resilience. Do you agree with that? Does that bother you when people say that the only thing that we need to do for burnout is resilience?
Well, the situation with resilience is this: it is a support system for you. It can be preventative for you, but once you're burned out, it is not a cure. So you can create those support systems ahead of time. You can put them in place once you've gotten through your burnout to make sure it doesn't come back. But if you're expecting yoga to get you through full on clinical burnout, it's not going to get the job done for you. And I understand why that tends to be what people talk about, because burnout is so unique. How do you say to someone, here's the answer, when the answer is going to be as unique as you are? You fall back on resilience. So then what happens is people who are deep into burnout go looking for answers. What they hear is resilience, and they're like, that doesn't work for me. I guess it's hopeless. And that makes me concerned, because if you've got somebody who's full on clinical burnout, so they're starting to get depressed, and you add that hopelessness on top of it, that is not a good thing. So for me, when resilience comes up, I feel like we need to make it real clear that this is not a cure. It's supportive, it's preventative, but it is not a cure.
Can you give us some examples of resilience?
When you're talking resilience, you're talking about building up your personal reserves. And that could be, for one person, it might be journaling and meditation. For another person, it might be a daily workout. For somebody else, it might be practicing gratitude. And it's really interesting. When you start looking at the history of mental health and how we used to cure mental health versus how we're handling it now, I mean, way back in the day, we thought people were possessed by demons. And
Right.
then when we finally switched over to the idea that it was a disorder or a disease, then we were looking to fix what was broken. And it's just been the last decade or two that people have started saying, you know what, let's stop looking at what's broken and start looking at what's not broken. And can we measure that? And we can actually measure happiness. We can actually measure gratitude. We can actually measure mental health, not just mental unhealth. And so when you start looking at that, you find that things like focusing on gratitude can actually make you happy. It's one of the few things that can be both resilience and curative.
Wow. Well, Doc, we're running out of time. Can you share with us how we can get in touch with you, or read any material that you've written, or how we can get our hands on this new book that's coming out?
Absolutely. My website is burnoutdrhollie.com. And, after we scheduled our discussion, I started thinking about what I could do to provide some concrete value for your listeners. And what I did was I came up with a quiz that they can take to determine what of their personality traits are actually making them vulnerable to burnout. And then they would get a report that says, this is what your trait is. This is the areas that are really great about this trait. This is something that you may want to put in place to shore up the potential pitfalls of that one. And then to give some people a starting place for how to move forward if you're feeling burnt out, or how to have a conversation about it. So if somebody wants to take that quiz, it would be burnoutdrhollie.com/quiz.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Spurgeon. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy and hectic schedule to be with us. I'm so greatly appreciated.
Oh, thanks for having me. It was fun.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was. And maybe we can do this again in the future.
I'd love to.
Sounds great. Sounds great. Well, my friends, we're out of time for this edition of the Underground Subway. I want to give a special thank you to all of you that joined this edition. I want to give a special thank you for those of you that took time to be with us. I want to give a special thank you to our guest for this edition of the Underground Subway, Dr.Hollie St, for being with us and for really getting deeper and deeper into this subject of burnout. If you're like me, you have people that you work with that you maybe can see some of the signs and symptoms, and it's always good to talk to a professional such as Dr. St to give us some more clarity on how maybe we can help these individuals. And I want to challenge you, if you know someone in your life that is experiencing burnout, or you're starting to see the signs in their life as well as your life, I want to challenge you to go to her website. You will see the website listed here in the comment section of the podcast. Go to her website, take the quiz, get in touch with her. And we want you to get all of the help you can get. My grandmother used to say, get all you can and can all you get. Well, I hear the music playing in the background, and that's always a sign that the Underground Subway is about to come to an end. We're pulling into the station, and we're pulling up to Purpose Avenue and Destiny Boulevard, as we are here to make life better for you. Again, a special thanks to our guest, Dr.Hollie St, and a special thanks to you that are listening, whether you're listening on the treadmill, whether you're listening at work with your AirPods, or just at home or in the car, wherever you're listening. I appreciate you. Listen, my friends, before you go to bed tonight, I want to challenge you to find a mirror, look yourself in the eyes, and ask yourself a question before you go to bed tonight. Today, did I do something to make this world a better place? Did I do something to work toward my destiny and my purpose? Or did I just waste another day? Think about that. No more time to waste. Have a great day today, better day tomorrow, and a peaceful sleep. I'm David Austin, host and conductor of the Underground Subway. We'll see you next time, right here.
Wanna hear you go.